You did not find this book. This book found you. It called to you in the quiet moments when the world grew dim and some voice beneath the noise whispered, "There must be more." It reached through the folds of your ordinary life, between coffee cups, traffic lights, heartaches, and half-dreams, and reminded you of a truth so ancient and so intimate that it trembled in your bones the moment your eyes met the first line. Because something in you remembers, something in you knows. You have not come to be taught. You have come to be reminded. This is not a book. This is a mirror. What you're about to read is not a sequence of ideas or concepts meant to decorate your intellect. It is a code, an energetic sequence. It is a whisper from the part of you that never forgot, never died, never became small. You may call it soul, higher self, divine spark, or, as some scriptures name it, the indwelling presence, the fragment of the infinite embedded in the finite. What matters is not the name. What matters is that you're ready now to remember. And this is dangerous, because to remember what you are is to forget what you were told to be. You were conditioned to believe you were a separate self, a biological accident adrift in an indifferent universe. You were taught to seek God above, beside, behind, in some distant heaven or external savior. You were made to kneel before altars you could never touch, waiting for redemption as if your very existence was some cosmic mistake in need of fixing. But what if this was the lie? What if the separation was the illusion? What if the distance between you and God was never real? Only a veil made of thought, trauma, tradition, repetition. This book is an act of rebellion against forgetting, and a call to the real revolution, remembrance. You will not find dogma here. You will not be asked to believe, follow, or convert. You will not be sold a new system, a new religion, or a new savior, because the answer was never outside. The truth was never hidden from you, only buried beneath layers of noise, shame, and spiritual amnesia. We will walk through ancient thresholds together, through forgotten teachings and secret wisdom that was never truly lost, only displaced. You will hear the echoes of Egypt, the breath of the Upanishads, the heartbeat of the Gnostics, and the fire of the Sufis. You will meet mystics who never wrote books, scientists who discovered God in equations, and prophets who hid truth in metaphor to keep it alive. We will dance through symbols, scriptures, frequencies, and paradoxes. We will learn to read reality not with the mind alone, but with the whole being, with a nervous system reawakened to divine voltage. We will touch on the teachings of the Urantia book, not as doctrine, but as invitation to explore a cosmos where spirit is not above, but within, where God is not an old man in the sky, but the frequency at the center of your very breath. And yes, we will speak of sound, of how the universe began not with light, but with vibration, of how the cosmos is less a machine and more a song, and how your body, your voice, your intention is an instrument in that great orchestra of creation. We will rediscover the science of faith, the forgotten geometry of the soul, and the sacred technologies embedded in your own heart. But this is not theory. This is not poetry for the sake of beauty. This is survival of the real you, the version of you that the world needs. Not the masked one, not the edited one, the one buried under 1,000 roles. The one who came to this planet with memory still intact, and who now stands at the threshold of reactivation. Because make no mistake, this Earth, this Urantia, is no ordinary world. It is a planet wounded by forgetting, a sphere suspended between rebellion and redemption, a cosmic classroom in the midst of great correction. You chose to come here, not to escape, but to remember, not to consume comfort, but to become a living reminder, a walking frequency of divine memory, so that others too might remember And so this book is not information. It is initiation. It does not require agreement. It requires presence. You will not read it. You will be read by it. Each page is a mirror held to your inner world, revealing not what you know, but what you are. You may find yourself weeping for reasons you don't understand, or vibrating at a level your nervous system hasn't felt since before you had a name. That is not a problem. That is the code working. Let it. The mind may resist. Let it. The soul will not. There's a reason this text entered your field at this time. Perhaps you have felt the subtle dissonance growing louder, the sense that reality itself is vibrating wrong, like a song played slightly out of key. Perhaps you have long suspected that your prayers were not unanswered, only misdirected, sent outward when the receiver was always inward. Perhaps you've touched the real for a brief moment, in meditation, in nature, in grief, in birth, in silence. Perhaps you've known all along that this world could be different, if only someone remembered how. Then let this be your remembering, because this is not the end. This is the beginning. And so I ask you now, not as a teacher to a student, but as one remembering to another. Are you ready to stop seeking and start resonating? Are you ready to stop chasing miracles and start becoming one? Then take a breath, not just into your lungs, but into your field. Feel it. That's not air. That's God. And the page you are about to turn, that is not paper. That is the first ripple of your return. Before there was light, there was sound. Before there were stars, galaxies, matter, or even time, there was a trembling, a pulse, a vibration beyond pitch or tone, without beginning or end. The ancients called it by many names, the word, the breath, the name that cannot be spoken. But what they were pointing to was not a word or even a sound in the human sense. They were pointing to the frequency behind existence itself. Everything that is began with this. Science now calls it background radiation, a low hum that fills all space, left over from the birth of the universe. But the mystics knew it long before the telescopes. The Dogon people of Mali said that all life was born from a sound sent by the Namo, amphibious celestial beings who brought language and vibration to the earth. In their cosmology, it was not a creator god who carved matter, but a sonic principle, a sound being that ordered the chaos into form. In the East, the rishis of ancient India said the same in a single syllable, Om. Not merely a chant, but the original frequency from which the entire cosmos emerged. An infinite tone that contains all tones, a resonance of being itself. Not something you say, but something you become. And in the Gospel of John, long after pyramids had crumbled and the fire temples had gone silent, a whisper remained. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word. Not an idea, not a book, a vibration. The first act of creation was not light. It was sound. Modern science, trying to catch up with the intuition of mystics, has revealed that sound quite literally shapes matter. Through cymatics, the study of visible sound frequencies, we now know that vibrations create form, that sound waves, when passed through particles, generate astonishing geometries. Patterns that mirror mandalas, snowflakes, cellular structures, and ancient temple designs. These aren't just curiosities, they're the blueprints of life. The invisible becomes visible through vibration. The formless enters form through resonance. This is not metaphor. This is physics, and it is sacred. You are not a solid object. You are a waveform, condensed. Every cell in your body is vibrating. Every organ, humming. Your voice, your breath, your thoughts, they're not idle emissions, but frequencies being broadcast into a field that is both ancient and alive. You are not separate from the universe. You are a note in its chord. And like any note, When you resonate at the right frequency, you amplify the music of the whole. The mystics were not speaking figuratively when they said God is within you. They were telling you that your very being, your presence, your pulse, your breath, is composed of the same primordial tone that summons stars into existence. You do not need to seek the divine in distant heavens. You are vibrating it right now. Even your silence is sound. Even your stillness sings. And yet, most have forgotten how to hear, because the modern world is loud but not harmonious. We are bombarded by frequencies designed to disconnect us: electromagnetic fields, synthetic sounds, digital noise. We are overstimulated but under-attuned. The nervous system is flooded, but the soul is mute. We hear everything except the original tone, and so we wonder why we feel out of rhythm, out of place, out of self. But the body remembers. There's a reason why certain music brings you to tears, why chanting calms your anxiety, why your heartbeat syncs with someone you love. Sound bypasses thought. It speaks directly to the architecture of being. It doesn't ask for your understanding. It asks for your participation. Because sound is not entertainment. It is creation. And to re-enter creation, you must learn to listen again. You must learn to vibrate on purpose. You must become not a consumer of frequency, but a generator. This is why the sages chanted in caves, why temples were built to echo certain tones, why indigenous elders sang to the water before drinking, why sacred syllables were passed in whispers. They were not performing ritual. They were entering resonance. They were remembering the song, and that song is still playing. Not in some remote corner of the universe, but in you. If you close your eyes now and breathe slowly from the base of your spine to the crown of your head, and then just listen without expectation, you may notice something. Not a sound from the outside, but an inner tone, low and persistent, like the hum of a distant star. That is not imagination. That is your origin frequency. You are tuning in. That tone was there before you were born, and it will remain after your last breath. It is not yours, and yet it is you. Let it grow. Let it fill you. Let it remind you that you are not an object in a world of things, but a vibration in an ocean of sound. You are not seeking truth. You are vibrating truth. And when your frequency aligns with the tone of origin, everything that is false falls away like static. What remains is music. What remains is God. When you speak, you're not simply expressing a thought. You are activating the field. Your voice is not a decoration of your personality, but a tuning fork of your soul. Each word carries weight, tone, and frequency. Each syllable has the potential to sculpt or distort the vibrational architecture of your life. Language is not merely communication, it is creation. And the forgotten truth is that every time you speak, you are weaving sound into structure, tone into timeline. The ancients understood this long before linguistics. In Egypt, words were considered alive. Hieroglyphs were not just symbolic, they were energetic vessels. To speak a name was to call its essence into the room. In the Hebrew tradition, the very name of God, the Tetragrammaton, was unpronounceable not out of fear, but out of reverence for its frequency. To utter it without preparation was to fracture the harmony between heaven and earth. And yet, today we speak mindlessly. We saturate our lives with hollow frequencies, muttering through stress and distraction. We fill our homes, our heads, our hearts with sound that does not nourish, only numbs. We chant the mantras of anxiety, of scarcity, of comparison. We declare limitations as if they were facts. I can't. I'm not enough. It never works. But every phrase is a code, every belief a vibration, and the field listens without judgment. It mirrors what you emit. It becomes what you declare. To return to the source, to re-enter the harmony of the origin sound, We must reclaim our voice not as a tool of ego, but as an instrument of soul. This begins not with volume, but with resonance. Not with shouting louder, but vibrating truer. There is a reason indigenous cultures sang before battle, before healing, before vision quests. There is a reason Tibetan monks still chant in tones that rattle the bones of mountains. There's a reason Gregorian choirs built cathedrals with harmonics that lift the soul above thought. It was never for entertainment. It was alchemy. It was tuning the self to the sacred. And this tuning is still available. Now, in this moment, with nothing more than your breath. Close your eyes. Let your mouth soften. Take a breath, not to survive, but to remember. And now, as the air rises, release a sound. Not a word, a tone, pure and ancient. Who? O-M-A-H. R-A. Choose what calls you, not intellectually but somatically. Let it vibrate through your chest, through your throat, through your skull. Not as performance, but as remembering. You're not making sound. You are remembering the sound. This is your original tongue, before language, before thought. This is the language of the stars, the syntax of the soul. Every spiritual tradition has guarded pieces of this sonic code. The Sufis turn in ecstasy while whispering the names of the beloved. The yogis chant bija mantras, seed syllables that bloom new states of being. The Kabbalists recite letters that hold universes. The Gnostics once spoke in tongues, not to impress, but to bypass the corruption of logic and touch the divine directly through frequency. This is not mysticism for the sake of mystery. It is the memory of what you are, because at your most essential level, you're not a body or even a thought. You are a tone. You are resonance shaped into biology, spirit condensed into frequency. And when you remember this, you stop trying to force reality. You begin to sing with it. You become the song. There are no beliefs required here. Only attention. No rituals to memorize. Only presence. The invitation is simple, attune. Because to live out of tune is to suffer. To vibrate against your design is to fracture your purpose. But to re-enter your native frequency, the one you were born humming before language taught you to forget, is to begin again. Not from scratch, but from truth. It is not too late. The universe is still singing. And so are you. Let the sound begin, not from your mouth, but from your soul. Let it rise, raw and unrefined. Let it carry your grief, your memory, your longing, your joy. Let it crack the static of modern life and ripple outward into the field, not to impress the world, but to remember the world into harmony. Because when you vibrate as you truly are, the universe recognizes itself. And that recognition is what we call miracle. There is a space between thought and matter, a space between desire and manifestation, between the formless and the formed. It is not empty. It is alive, vibrating with intelligence, intention, and potential. That space is the mind, not the brain, not the noise of scattered thoughts, but the luminous field of awareness that links the finite to the eternal. You were not given a mind to think, but to bridge worlds. The mind, in its sacred design, is a mirror suspended between dimensions. On one side, it reflects the transient, memories, objects, names, roles. On the other, it opens into the infinite, silence, essence, being. It is a sacred interface, a cosmic instrument capable of translating energy into experience, soul into symbol, spirit into story. But only if it is attuned. Most have forgotten what the mind truly is. We mistake it for the echo chamber of anxiety, a processor of schedules and worries. We train it to calculate, compare, manipulate. We fill it with information, confuse it with identity, and call this consciousness. But true mind is not noise. It is spaciousness. It is not the voice, but the listening. It is not memory, but the field in which memory arises. The physicist David Bohm called this the implicate order, a hidden fabric beneath what we perceive, where everything is connected to everything else, not through space, but through resonance. Reality, in this vision, is not a sequence of disconnected things, but a single flowing movement, a holographic of the entire universe. This is not fantasy. It is physics. It is also mysticism. Hermetic teachings from ancient Egypt spoke of this long ago. As above, so below. As within, so without. They knew that reality is not built like a machine, but unfolds like a fractal, self-similar patterns echoing across scales of existence. What you see is not separate from what you are. What you think, feel, expect, and project is woven into what appears. The outer world is not other. It is mind made visible. This is what the ancients knew without language. This is what the mystics lived without equations. That consciousness is not trapped in the skull, but diffused throughout the field of being. That the mind is not yours, but something you participate in. You're not thinking alone. You are thinking within a mind that thinks you too. The Urantia book echoes this. The mind is your ship, the adjuster is your pilot, and the human will is the captain. But without awareness of this cosmic architecture, we drift. We believe we are passengers in a chaotic world, reacting to what appears, never realizing we are also the architects of its appearance. The world you experience is not happening to you. It is unfolding through you. You are projecting reality, not observing it. This is not metaphor. This is structure. The mind, when unconscious, recycles old patterns and calls them fate. But when awakened, it becomes a lens through which the divine edits reality. The untrained mind reflects the past. The attuned mind bends time. There is no greater responsibility and no greater liberation. To mold reality is not to force it, but to remember that it is pliable. That matter listens. That experience is shaped not only by action, but by perception, and that perception is vibration. The frequency you hold determines the form that responds. And your frequency is shaped by what you focus on, by what you expect, by what you feel in your marrow when no one is watching. Every belief you hold is a filter. Every story you repeat is a spell. Every assumption is an invitation to the field to reflect that version back to you. And the field does not hesitate. It obeys. The mind is not just a passive screen onto which life is projected. It is the projector itself. But there is more. Just as each cell in your body carries the full blueprint of your DNA, each point of awareness in the universe contains the whole. This is the heart of the holographic principle. This is why a single glimpse of truth can transform a lifetime of illusion. Why a moment of presence can heal what decades of therapy could not touch. Because when you access the whole, even briefly, it reorders everything. To remember this is to stop feeling powerless. To live this is to remember you are not in the universe. You are of it. You are not a thing in space. You are space becoming aware of itself through the lens of your attention. And when that attention sharpens, steadies, deepens, the world reshapes to meet it. You are not here to escape matter. You are here to spiritualize it. The mind is not the enemy of the soul. It is its translator, its vessel, its brush against the canvas of form. But only when clear, centered, and aligned with truth. When distracted and fragmented, the mind becomes a hall of mirrors, multiplying illusions until you forget where the light came from. You see reflections of reflections, copies of copies, until the original is lost and suffering begins. But suffering, too, is feedback. It is not punishment. It is resonance misaligned. The universe does not punish. It reflects. And the mirror is mercilessly honest. What you expect is often what returns. What you fear is often what rises. Not because the world is cruel, but because your mind, like a lens, cannot help but bend the beam according to its curvature. A distorted lens produces a distorted world. A purified lens reveals the real. To purify the lens of the mind is the beginning of liberation. It is not enough to think differently. You must begin to see differently, and then to feel the truth of what you see, not with analysis, but with your whole nervous system. This is what the mystics knew when they spoke of gnosis. Not information, but recognition. Not knowledge about reality, but intimacy with it. The hologram reveals itself not to those who dissect, but to those who remember how to feel beyond form. The mind is a sculptor of fields. When infused with presence, it bends probabilities like heat bends light. This is not superstition. This is the subtle physics of consciousness. And it is always working, whether or not you are aware of it. Your life is not shaped by what you want. It is shaped by what you expect at the deepest, quietest level. What you habitually see in your inner world becomes the script of your outer one, not as punishment, as agreement. Every morning you enter a hologram of your own making, a reflection of accumulated perceptions, beliefs, traumas, and hidden dreams. Most people relive the same hologram for decades, calling it reality. But it is only an echo of yesterday's vibration. And vibration can change instantly when mind returns to alignment with essence. This is why inner stillness is not luxury, but necessity. In stillness, the surface turbulence settles, and the deeper pattern becomes visible, like watching the ripples fade on a pond until the stars above reflect clearly. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the alignment of mind with being. From this place, visualization is no longer fantasy. It becomes precision, the intentional sculpting of energy into form, not to force outcomes, but to collaborate with the field, to enter resonance, not domination. This is the secret behind all sacred creation, that form follows frequency. You do not need to know how it will happen. You only need to vibrate with its truth now. So close your eyes. Feel the image forming not in your head, but in your field. See not with your mind, but through it. Sense the desired reality already breathing within you. A scene, a presence, a shift. But don't observe it like a stranger. Step into it. Move from watching to embodying. Let the feeling of fulfillment settle not as hope, but as memory. As if the future is simply the present remembering itself. And now let it go. You do not need to hold it tightly. Reality does not respond to pressure. It responds to resonance. Let it echo from you as a note, not clung to, but released. The universe is a living intelligence. It received the message the moment your vibration aligned with the signal. There is nothing else to do now, except become the kind of vessel that allows that signal to unfold. This is not visualization as technique. It is harmonization. This is not magic as manipulation. It is spiritual physics. You're no longer a passive observer of the flat world. You are a conscious participant in a multidimensional field. And the key to navigating it is not force, but coherence. Your mind is not meant to control. It is meant to tune. And when it tunes to love, truth, gratitude, and clarity, the whole hologram responds. Not because you imposed it, but because you remembered how to let it sing with you. There is no distance between thought and reality, only delay. There is no delay when thought becomes resonance. You are a creator not by will, but by design. You do not need to earn this. You need only remember. Your mind is not broken. It is sacred. It is not a problem to solve. It is a portal to walk through. And on the other side is the world that remembers you back into wholeness. There is something in you that does not change. It was there before your name, before your memories, before your story, before your body began its slow unfolding. It was there when you were only breath and openness, when the world was not yet separated into self and other, when reality was not yet filtered through language or fear. And it will still be there when the name is gone, when the body falls silent, when all identities dissolve like mist. It is not a belief. It is not a feeling. It is not even your soul. It is what came before the soul. Some have called it the inner witness, the light of awareness, the divine spark. But long before these words, long before theology and tradition, it was simply known as the presence. In the Urantia book, it is given a name as strange as it is precise, the thought adjuster. Not a symbol, not a metaphor, but a living fragment of God implanted within you, guiding, shaping, whispering, adjusting the currents of your inner world in ways far more subtle than you can track. The thought adjuster is not an idea. It is the part of God that chose to take residence within you. You're not just being watched over by the divine. You are being indwelt by it. This knowing shatters everything you were taught about distance, about unworthiness, about the need to earn love or climb ladders of approval towards some faraway heaven. The journey to God is not upward, it is inward. The light you seek is not above, but within, not external, but eternal. And this fragment, this adjuster, does not impose. It waits. It does not force. It invites, like a divine echo folded into the background of your consciousness. It nudges when you are quiet enough to notice. It is not the voice of logic or of emotion or even intuition. It is older than all three. It speaks in silence. It speaks in alignment. It speaks through a sudden stillness, a shift, a recognition. Not words, but inner knowing. Not commands, but clarity. You have felt it before in the moments when you knew what was right without being told. In the spaces where your heart opened for no reason. In the guidance that came not from thought, but from a deeper center. That was not your ego. That was not your conditioning. That was not your fear. That was God, inside you, remembering itself through you. The Gnostic texts whispered the same truth, that within every human beats a divine twin, a sacred double, a hidden Christ seed waiting to awaken. Not a savior above, but a presence within. Not something to worship, but something to embody. The Gospel of Thomas echoes, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. But if you do not, it remains a dormant code, sacred but silent. And the world, in its forgetting, has conspired to keep you from hearing it. Noise, distraction, shame, performance, endless seeking. You are taught to look everywhere except the one place it truly lives, within. You were taught to perform for love, to earn belonging, to reach for God as if the divine were a prize and you a contestant. But the adjuster does not respond to effort. It responds to intimacy, to stillness, to surrender. This is the paradox. The divine within you is vast, infinite, and yet it can only be heard in the smallest silence. It does not shout. It does not argue. It waits for your inner consent. And when you offer it, not as performance, but as presence, something holy begins to move. You feel it not as an external answer, but as a shift in reality itself. A deeper rhythm, a deeper yes, and that yes reshapes your entire field. This is not poetry. This is transformation at the root. You become less reactive, less afraid, less attached to the passing winds of identity. The voice of the ego loses its grip. The tides of emotion settle, and beneath all of it The adjuster begins to shine, not just within you, but as you. You do not become divine. You remember that you always were. To hear the adjuster is not to receive words. It is to become quiet enough to feel when truth enters the room of your awareness uninvited. It arrives like a warmth in the chest, a pause in thought, a slowing of the mind's machinery. Often it comes as nothing, an absence, a holy vacancy where anxiety once lived. You do not always notice when it enters. You only realize that something is different. You're not pushing anymore. You're not seeking. You are listening, and in that listening, you are being held. The Urantia book speaks of this as the most sacred partnership available to the human experience. Not merely God watching over man, but God within man, adjusting his thought life moment by moment, in cooperation with the soul's consent. It is described not as magic, but as spiritual mechanics, that the adjuster is constantly attempting to align your thoughts with the divine blueprint seated within your higher nature. But this alignment is not forced. It is offered. Your participation is required. You are not a puppet of God. You are a partner. This is the beauty and the burden of free will. You can resist the divine whisper for years, lifetimes, entire incarnations, and it will never stop loving you. It will never leave. It will wait with a patience the human mind cannot comprehend. Because the adjuster does not measure time the way you do. It holds eternity inside it and sees you not as you are now, but as the perfected version of yourself already known in the higher planes. To the adjuster, you are already whole. You're already home. What remains is for you to realize it. But realization is not thinking. It is not agreeing. It is not repeating beliefs. It is presence. Realization means making real, not as concept, but as lived vibration. This is where the true communion with the adjuster begins, not as a moment of inspiration, but as a life increasingly shaped by inner resonance. You begin to choose differently, not because of rules or fear, but because the deeper knowing gently overrides the lesser desires. This is what the mystics meant by inner guidance. Not voices, not visions, but alignment. Alignment that rewrites the way you speak, walk, breathe, decide. Alignment that moves so silently you can barely name it. Only witness it in the unfolding grace of your life becoming simpler, clearer, lighter. You no longer force reality. You harmonize with it. You no longer fight the moment. You become one with it. And in that union, something extraordinary begins to emerge. Trust. Not blind belief, but sacred trust. A trust that no matter what appears externally, the adjuster is working within, shaping each experience for the evolution of your soul. Even the pain, even the delays, even the losses, especially those. For the adjuster speaks most clearly when the ego has nothing left to say. In silence, the real voice emerges. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is doorway. When you practice the art of inner stillness, not as escape, but as offering, you begin to hear not with your ears, but with your being. You begin to sense that guidance is not an external intervention, but a steady current flowing beneath your personality, beneath your hopes and fears. And you do not have to go far to touch it. You only have to become quiet enough to let it rise. There are no secrets to this. You need no initiation, no priest, no spiritual badge. You need only the willingness to sit, to breathe, and to listen, not for answers, but for alignment, not for instructions, but for presence. And when you do, something shifts, not all at once, but unmistakably. The atmosphere within you becomes clearer. The noise begins to dissolve. You do not become a better person. You become a truer one. You become more like yourself than you've ever been. And in that becoming, the adjuster rejoices, not as a being above, but as the part of you that was always divine. You will not find this voice in logic. You will not force it with prayer. You will not reach it by effort. You will hear it when you stop trying to hear it. You will feel it when you surrender the need to feel anything at all. Because the divine within you is not a guest. It is your essence. You were never separate. You only dreamed you were. Now, it is time to wake up, not into belief, but into remembrance. There is a presence inside you that is older than time, deeper than thought, brighter than any light the eyes have ever seen. And it is whispering still, waiting for the silence in which it can speak your name back to you. You are not thinking your way to God. You are feeling your way back home. Long before the mind can understand, the heart already knows. Not because it is logical, not because it is emotional, but because it is ancient. The heart is not just a pump of blood. It is an antenna of the soul, a radiant field of coherence that reaches beyond time and language, beyond belief and doubt, into the unspoken realms where truth is not taught, but remembered. The modern world taught you to put the mind on the throne, to worship intellect as the highest guide. But the mind, without the heart, becomes a closed circuit, intelligent but blind, efficient but unwise. It can calculate the path to success, but cannot recognize the direction of peace. It can design systems of survival, but cannot feel the meaning of sunrise. And so it builds endlessly, seeking stability through control, while the soul slowly withers in the absence of feeling. But the heart never left, even when ignored, even when buried beneath layers of protection and speed. It continued to pulse with a frequency of truth. It did not shout, it pulsed. And that pulse is more than circulation. It is communication. It is vibration. It is signal. You're not just a body with a heart inside it. You are a field of consciousness emanating from the heart outward. This is not metaphor. This is measurable. The HeartMath Institute has shown that the electromagnetic field of the heart is exponentially stronger than that of the brain, radiating far beyond the skin, capable of influencing others, capable of synchronizing with those you stand near. Your heart is not only sensing the world, it is shaping it. And when your heart enters coherence, when your breath slows, your thoughts soften, your emotions harmonize, your entire body shifts. Your nervous system rebalances. Your immune system responds. Your perception sharpens. You're no longer a fragment of yourself. You are whole. You are not surviving. You are attuning. And the divine meets you there. You do not need to summon God. You only need to feel clearly. Not just any feeling, not the waves of mood and memory, but the deeper current, the resonance beneath the noise, love without story, gratitude without object, compassion without agenda. These are not moral stances. They are frequencies. They are harmonics of higher reality. When you feel them sincerely and without effort, you are not merely being spiritual. You are aligning with the architecture of the universe. The Sufis have danced this truth for centuries, not to perform, but to dissolve. They turn in circles not to entertain, but to exit the mind and return to the heart. For them, the heart is not an organ of feeling. It is the seat of the beloved, the place where Allah whispers without words. Rumi did not write with his intellect. He wrote from the heart's eye, which sees in spirals and breathes in metaphors. His words were not his. They were echoes of the divine vibration within him. A heart made so empty it could hold the infinite. And Taoism, too, speaks of this, though it rarely speaks at all. It points to the way, the Tao, not as a thing to be studied, but as a rhythm to be felt. And that rhythm begins in the chest, not with striving, but with softening. The Tao is not understood. It is surrendered to. And the first step of surrender is to drop out of the spinning tower of the head and into the quiet garden of the heart. Because the heart doesn't argue. It listens. The heart doesn't prove. It perceives. It doesn't conquer. It includes. You can tell when someone lives from the heart. They walk differently. They speak without trying to impress. They offer presence without calculation. They do not dominate a room. They soften it. They do not convince. They resonate. And that resonance is unmistakable, even to those who don't know why they feel drawn to it. The heart is magnetic, not metaphorically, but energetically. To live from the heart is not a rejection of the mind. It is the redemption of it. It is the returning of thought to its rightful place, in service to wisdom. The mind thinks it knows. The heart simply knows, not in words, but in warmth, not in logic, but in presence. You have felt it, in moments of sudden peace, in spontaneous tears, in the inexplicable pull to help a stranger, in the quiet knowing that something is right, even when it makes no sense. That is the heart speaking, and it speaks with no language other than coherence. When you are in alignment, you do not need signs. You become the sign. Let yourself listen, not upward, not outward, inward, to the center of the chest, where the rhythm began before you knew how to name yourself. That is not just a heartbeat. That is the doorway. That is the axis between the seen and the unseen, the human and the holy. And the key is not effort. It is attention. Breathe into that space now, not just air, but awareness. Feel, and then feel more deeply. There is something waiting for you there that has waited since before your birth. To live from the heart is to stop resisting the present moment. It is to let the mind soften its grip, to stop demanding that life explain itself before allowing yourself to feel safe. The mind wants answers. The heart wants presence. The mind defends. The heart reveals. The mind categorizes people into reasons to protect yourself. The heart dissolves the separation that never existed. And in this dissolving, something sacred returns, a coherence between who you are and what is. This coherence is not poetic fluff. It is physiology. It is energy. The field of your heart affects the room you are in, the people you meet, the animals that trust you, the strangers who feel safe near you for no logical reason. It changes how your DNA expresses. It influences how your cells regenerate. It shapes the way others perceive you without a word spoken. The science of the Heart Math Institute confirms what mystics always knew, that love is not just a sentiment. It is a frequency. When emitted in sincerity, not force, not performance, it reorganizes everything it touches. But love cannot be faked. The heart knows the difference between a performance and a presence. The key is not to pretend to love everything. It is to sit quietly and breathe into your chest until the noise settles, until the pulse slows, until there is just enough space inside you to remember that even now, you are held. That even here, there is something worth offering your gentleness to. Not because everything is good, but because your heart doesn't require things to be good in order to remain open. This is the true strength of the heart. It does not overpower. It stays open, even when wounded, even when afraid, even when the mind insists it is not safe. The heart opens anyway, because it is not trying to win. It is trying to include. And inclusion is the language of divinity. It is not acceptance as resignation. It is acceptance as transcendence. Nothing is changed by force, but everything is transfigured by love. And this love, when it radiates from coherence, becomes medicine. Not just for others, for you. When you live from the heart, resentment decays. Not because you try to forgive, but because you forget how to keep the wound alive. When you live from the heart, anxiety softens. Not because you control everything, but because you trust something deeper than control. When you live from the heart, your purpose becomes less about achievement and more about offering. Your presence becomes your offering, your silence becomes your teaching, your stillness becomes your action. And then something profound happens. You begin to feel that you are not giving love. You're being given by love. It flows through you, not from you. It moves in rhythms older than language. It touches those around you not because you direct it, but because it knows where to go. And the more you let it move without filtering it through judgment or doubt, the stronger it becomes, until your very presence begins to calibrate others into coherence, without effort, without speech. This is not charisma. This is vibrational truth. It is what Jesus meant when he said, "Let your light so shine," not as display, as invitation. Your light does not convince. It allows others to see more clearly. And what they see is not your personality. It is their own reflection in the mirror of love. Let your breath return to your heart now, not to analyze, to feel, not to direct, to emit. Inhale gently, exhale slower, and then, without needing a reason, begin to allow a frequency of care to rise. Not for anyone specific, not for any cause, just care, pure and directionless. Let it rest behind your ribs. Let it radiate through your skin. Imagine it filling the space around you, not like smoke, but like light. You don't have to know how it works. You only have to allow it. Let it reach your memories. Let it touch the places you've hidden from yourself. Let it enter your next thought before it forms. And then let it go. You are not trying to become someone. You are returning to the one who has always been here, quiet, open, present. There is no door to unlock. The door was always open. There is no veil to tear. You are the veil and the light beyond it. And the heart is not the messenger. It is the message. Faith was never meant to be blind. It was never meant to be the last resort of the desperate, or the chant of those who could not prove what they hoped for. Faith was not meant to be a consolation. It was meant to be a force, not passive but radiant, not sentimental but structural, a field, not a wish, a frequency, not a fantasy. You were taught that faith means believing in something invisible, that it is the opposite of certainty. But what if that is reversed? What if faith is the deepest kind of certainty, not of outcome, but of being? Not belief in a story, but alignment with the field that shapes the story before it arrives? The ancients did not whisper about faith as comfort. They enacted it as power. When the woman touched the edge of the Christ's robe and was healed, he did not say, "My power healed you." He said, "Your faith has made you whole." Not your logic, not your desperation, not your ritual. Your faith, the coherent field of inner knowing that aligned your energy with the pattern of healing, had already done the work. Faith is not what you believe about God. Faith is what you allow reality to become when your being is no longer in conflict with itself. This is not religion. This is resonance. Modern physics is beginning to stumble toward this truth. At the edge of particle and wave, of observer and observed, we find a strange dance, that the mere expectation of the viewer shapes the behavior of light. That matter responds to consciousness. That potential does not collapse into form until observed. The experiment is changed by the one witnessing it, not from manipulation, but from presence. This is not magic. This is the architecture of faith. To stand in faith is not to command reality, but to merge with its creative pulse. It is to stop begging the universe to give you what you want, and instead become the version of yourself who already lives within what you are asking for. To radiate coherence instead of scarcity. To act as if the new reality is not coming, but already here, waiting only for your nervous system to stop doubting it. The Urantia book describes faith not as belief in dogma, but as the inner bridge between mortal mind and divine presence, a subtle faculty of the soul that activates cooperation with the indwelling spirit. Faith, in this view, is not what you think about God. It is what you feel in your marrow when your mind goes quiet and something deeper begins to hum. It is the mechanism by which the adjuster shapes your becoming. You have used this force before, even if unconsciously. Every time you've stepped into an unknown and moved with calm, you've activated faith. Every time you've chosen love despite the evidence, stayed open when afraid, breathed through grief instead of denying it, you are not surviving. You are shaping reality. You are transmitting trust into the field. And the field does not resist trust. It bends toward it. Faith, when real, is not a declaration. It is a frequency. It does not insist. It allows. It does not push. It pulses. And the more coherent that pulse becomes, the more the field reorganizes itself to reflect your inner world. Not because you're special, but because you're finally in tune with what has always been true. This is the secret. Faith is not asking for what you want. It is becoming a match for it. And this becoming requires not effort, but practice. Begin with breath. Slow, grounded. Let your spine lengthen and your body grow still. Begin not with petition, but with presence. Let yourself feel where fear still lives, not to fight it, but to notice it. Then gently, with compassion, begin to speak not to God, but as if God is already within you, listening from the inside out. Let your words be less about outcome and more about alignment. Not make this happen, but thank you for what already is. Not please fix me, but I remember who I am. Speak not to change reality, but to calibrate your body to the frequency of already answered prayer. And then, right? Not as therapy, as tuning. Let your pen become a transmitter. Write down what you are choosing to remember. That your being is not small, that your fear is not your master, that your desires are not sins but blueprints. That faith is not about waiting, it is about vibrating. And what you vibrate consistently becomes the pattern that draws reality into form. This is not pretending. This is remembering from the future. And when you write from that space, something begins to move. Not in the world, in you. The grip of doubt loosens. The tension of grasping melts. And something quieter begins to speak, not from a mind, but from the deeper field. A knowing, a rhythm, a yes. You do not need to prove this. You only need to embody it. You are not here to argue for possibility. You are here to become it. You cannot fake the vibration of faith. You can say the words, you can write the affirmations, you can go through the rituals, but the field only responds to coherence. Faith is not performance. It is not saying what you think you should say. It is not thinking positively while secretly vibrating fear. It is not hoping so hard that you exhaust yourself pretending to believe. Faith begins where pretending ends. It does not require certainty. It requires surrender, not to fate, but to alignment with a higher rhythm that you may not yet understand but are willing to trust. And that trust, when sustained, becomes a sculptor. It is what moves you toward what is already reaching for you. The path of faith is not a straight line paved with signs. Often, it is a foggy walk through inner territory where every step feels like a question. But what allows the path to appear is not vision. It is vibration. The step creates the road. The choice to walk, even without visible proof, sends out a signal. That signal begins drawing unseen currents toward you. People, opportunities, intuitions, ideas. Not by accident, not by luck, by resonance. The Gospel of Mark speaks it simply. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Not believe you might receive it someday. Not believe if you are good enough, but believe that it has already occurred. That time is not linear for the divine, and you are stepping into an already resolved outcome that now seeks only your embodiment. This is not about forcing results. This is about becoming available to the version of reality where your prayer is already fulfilled. The only thing that separates you from that version is the interference pattern of doubt, of unworthiness, of impatience. These are not flaws. They're static. They distort the transmission. They collapse the waveform into lesser timelines. But the moment you return to the vibration of quiet trust, not passive, not desperate, but peaceful, the field begins to reorient. Not always immediately, but always faithfully. The mistake is thinking that faith is about avoiding fear. It is not. Faith is what you hold on to when fear arrives. Not as resistance, but as refusal to collapse. Faith is the vibration that remains steady when the surface of your life becomes chaotic. Faith is not the denial of pain. It is the refusal to let pain define the boundary of what's possible. This is why faith must become a practice, not just a feeling. A vibration must be sustained, not rigidly, but rhythmically, like breath, like heartbeat, like prayer. This is where your faith journal becomes a sacred tool, not to keep a record of your begging, but a record of your remembering. Not to document how life failed to deliver on your timeline, but to trace the pattern of grace you didn't see in the moment. Write not only what you are hoping for, write what you are already grateful for. Not only what is visible, but what is vibrationally forming in the unseen. This trains your nervous system to hold the frequency of fulfilled faith even in moments of uncertainty. Because uncertainty is not the enemy of faith, it is the doorway to it. Faith does not replace effort, it refines it. Faith does not eliminate action, it aligns it. Faith is not the opposite of doing. It is the reason for doing, with joy, with trust, with the inner knowing that the seed you plant is not only buried in the soil, but already unfolding beneath it. And the deeper secret is this: faith is contagious. When you live it, not shout it, not preach it, but radiate it, the field around you begins to calibrate. People feel more possible around you. They begin to trust life a little more, not because of what you said, but because of what you are. Your energy becomes an ecosystem of permission, not because you are perfect, but because you are consistent. You can become a portal of probability for others, not through force, through field. This is the real power of vibrational prayer. Not words sent upward, but frequencies broadcast outward, rooted in the living confidence that what you carry is already real on a level deeper than sight. Speak from that place, lie from that pulse, trust from that silence, and let reality do what it was designed to do, respond. Because you are not asking the universe to bend to your will. You are remembering that you are already woven into its will. You are not attracting what you want. You are remembering that the version of you who already lives within that future is asking you to catch up. And the only way to meet that version is to start vibrating like them. Now, that is not delusion. That is creation. That is faith. The body was never just a container. It was never a prison for the soul, never a mistake to escape, never a crude form to transcend on the way to something more divine. That was a lie taught by minds that had forgotten how to feel. The truth is quieter and far more luminous. The body is the map of light written in flesh. A sacred text that does not need to be read, only remembered. You are not simply living in a body. You are the body, vibrating the soul into visibility. Your breath is not mechanical. Your blood is not just biological. Every beat, every cell, Every posture is a whisper of geometry echoing the original design. You are patterned, not assembled, and the pattern is holy. Ancient civilizations knew what modern science is just beginning to recall. That form is not random. That life does not emerge from accident, but from alignment. The Egyptians saw the body as a replica of the cosmos, each organ a portal, each bone a glyph, each gland a temple chamber where spirit could pass into matter. The body was not studied, it was initiated. Its inner workings were not merely medical, but mystical. The heart was weighed not for its health, but for its truth. The spine was a ladder of stars. The eyes were gateways of Ra. But this wisdom was not theirs alone. In the temples of India, sacred geometry was inscribed into architecture and into the body. The chakras were not imagined symbols. They were luminous intersections of consciousness and form, wheels of energy mirroring cosmic centers. The nervous system was seen as the river of divine current. The endocrine system was a cascade of vibrational tones, each gland echoing a frequency of evolution. You were not designed in error. You were constructed like a cathedral, not by hands, but by harmonic intelligence. The ratios in your face, the curvature of your spine, the rhythm of your breath, they are not arbitrary. They are the music of the universe made visible in form. The golden mean, the Fibonacci spiral, the sacred tetrahedron, all of it is inscribed within you. Not symbolically, but literally. Your very tissues hum with the mathematics of God. And yet you were taught to overlook it. You were taught to judge the body as flawed, to control it, to ignore its signals, to dominate its rhythms in favor of speed, production, performance. You were taught to live in your mind and use the body like a machine, an expendable tool for productivity or pleasure. But the body was never a machine. It is a consciousness. It listens. It stores. It speaks. It remembers what you do not. It holds trauma as frozen geometry, trapped charge where light could not move freely. It responds not just to food or medicine, but to thought, to vibration, to your very presence. When you dishonor it, it contracts. When you love it, it softens. When you truly listen, it begins to release its codes, not in language, but in sensation. This is where healing begins, not in fixing the body, but in remembering that it was never separate from light. The more attuned you become, the more you notice. Energy precedes symptom. Emotion precedes injury. Belief precedes fatigue. Every imbalance in the body is a message from a deeper plane. It is not your enemy. It is your oracle. And to decode it, you must begin not with diagnosis, but with reverence. Sit with your body not as an owner, but as a guest. Place your hands over the heart. Feel the quiet intelligence beneath the skin, not as metaphor, as reality. Breathe slowly, not to calm the mind, but to realign the temple. Speak gently to the cells. They are listening. They have always been listening. They remember the tones of creation. Let your awareness travel inward, not to analyze, but to meet. The crown of your head is not a ceiling. It is a skylight. The pineal gland is not just an organ. It is a prism, refracting multidimensional light into coherent thought. The throat is not just for speaking. It is a tuning chamber, vibrating truth or distortion into the field. The heart is not a pump. It is a sun, radiating coherence. The belly is not a machine. It is a cauldron of transformation, digesting not just food, but emotion, memory, archetype. And your spine, it is the staff of the temple, the axis of the serpent, the ladder of light on which energy ascends and descends, shaping your field, calibrating your timeline. When aligned, you become a beacon. When collapsed, the current dims. Every posture is a prayer. Every gesture is a glyph. You're not your body, but you're also not separate from it. You are what happens when spirit codes itself in a form and calls it sacred. The ritual is simple, though never small. Stand barefoot on the earth. Breathe with the awareness that each inhale is not just oxygen. It is memory. It is starlight. It is the breath of the first humans and the echo of the galaxies. Exhale slowly. Let your body speak. Let release. Let realign. Not to fit into the world, but to remember that it was made in the image of the cosmos. You do not have to understand the codes. You only have to love the vessel that carries them. And when you do, it begins to open. The temple activates. The light returns. The body is not a passive thing you carry. It is a conscious symphony composed of frequencies, geometry, memory, and intention. You're not simply made of cells. You are made of sound shaped into form. Vibration gives birth to tissue. Resonance maintains structure. Every bone hums with ancestral instructions. Every organ responds to the internal song of your thoughts. Every movement traces invisible lines of energy once mapped by sages who remembered what science forgot. That to touch the body is to touch the divine. Your body is not a concept. It is a cathedral, and every time you move with presence, every time you walk with awareness, every time you breathe as if breath is sacred, the temple awakens. You feel it in the subtlest ways, the spine lengthening without strain, the breath deepening without effort, the heart softening without needing a reason. This is not technique. This is remembrance. It is the slow, sacred return of light into posture. The spine, long misunderstood as merely structural, is the serpent's staff of light, the jet of the Egyptians, the Sushumna of the yogis, the axis mundi of countless traditions. It is the central pillar where heaven meets earth, where root meets crown. Along it lie not just physical vertebrae, but energetic gateways. These gates are not fantasy. They are valves of perception, and when they open, the body becomes translucent to the soul. You do not need to name these gates to feel them. All you need is stillness, attention, and breath. The base of your spine carries the memory of belonging to the earth. The navel holds the code of becoming. The solar plexus radiates the fire of will, not as domination, but as divine autonomy. The heart always brings the above and below into coherence. The throat opens space for truth to rise. The brow clears the illusion of separation. And the crown, when unclenched, remembers the stars. But this is not a ladder you climb. It is a frequency you tune. You are not here to ascend out of the body. You are here to bring light into it. Every system of esoteric anatomy, from the meridians of Chinese medicine to the nadis of Indian science, from the Kabbalistic tree of life to the Egyptian light body maps, points not to escape, but to embodiment. They're not escape routes. They are star charts for incarnation. They teach us that to honor the body is not to worship form, but to recognize spirit pulsing within it. The ritual of realignment is not a ceremony you perform once. It is a way of being you return to again and again, especially when fragmented, especially when tired, especially when disembodied by speed or sorrow. It is a quiet recalibration, a soft listening to the places that have gone silent within you. You do not force them open. You breathe into them. You acknowledge them. You allow. Begin by turning toward your body as if it were your oldest friend. Not to fix it, but to greet it. Breathe into your feet and feel the forgotten intelligence there. Breathe into your hips, not to unlock trauma, but to create space for movement, for forgiveness, for grounding. Let your shoulders drop, as if 1,000 unspoken burdens just found the earth. Let your jaw release its grip. Let your hands remember that they are instruments of intention. Let your spine grow long like a tree. Let your heart pulse in all directions. There is no perfect posture. There is only presence. There is no right technique. There is only reverence. The ritual is not in what you do. It is in how you do it. Slowly, gently, coherently, in partnership with the intelligence that already lives inside every cell, waiting to be trusted again. This is not performance. It is prayer in motion. You do not realign the body through discipline. You realign it through intimacy. And as the body begins to feel seen again, it responds. The breath deepens. The fascia releases. The glands awaken. The nervous system no longer prepares for attack. It prepares for revelation. And in that softening, the light that was once trapped begins to move again into your field, into your voice, into your choices, into your destiny. You are not healing. You are remembering the design before distortion. And that design, your design, is encoded with the proportions of galaxies, the spiral of time, the golden mathematics of stars. You are not an accident of matter. You are a perfect expression of divine architecture, a temple built not by hands but by light, for the purpose of carrying consciousness through the fire of embodiment and into the art of love. And when you honor that, when you walk not just as a person but as a temple remembering its source, everything changes, not through force but through resonance. The body does not become perfect. It becomes radiant. It does not become flawless. It becomes whole. And in that wholeness, the light you carry no longer needs to be hidden, because the temple has been opened and the code has been reawakened. You did not come here by accident. You're not visiting Earth. You're answering a call. Beneath the forgetting, beneath the birth canal of amnesia, beneath the slow awakening through body and name and language, something in you remembered. It did not remember facts. It remembered frequency, the signal of a planet crying out for coherence, the echo of a world bruised by separation, but not forsaken, a luminous world cloaked in distortion. A sacred project paused mid-design, and you said yes, not with words, with vibration. You felt the ache of Urantia in your chest before you knew her name. You felt the urgency disguised as wonder, the sorrow braided into beauty, the confusion pulsing beneath the soil of every civilization. This world is not broken, but it is recovering. It is not fallen, but it has forgotten. And your being, your presence, is part of the remembering. Urantia, as named in the Urantia book, is more than Earth. It is Earth as she is known in the galactic records, not only as a planet of form, but as a node in a larger system of spiritual administration. A world disrupted by rebellion, misaligned by ancient confusion, and left temporarily adrift in cosmic governance. She is a sphere of contrast, rich in potential, marked by suffering, designed as a school for accelerated evolution. You were born into a world that forgot why it hurts, and the forgetting became religion. The separation became politics. The trauma became identity. But beneath all of it, something luminous endured. The spirit of truth still flows. The thought adjusters still indwell. The planetary heart still beats. And into this dissonance came you, not to fix it, but to participate in its awakening. You carry no ultimate answers, but you carry codes, not information, not credentials, but resonance. Your body is seeded with frequencies that restore balance without needing to argue. Your choices shape the field. Your integrity rewrites timelines. Your joy recalibrates space. When you remember who you are, the planet remembers a little more of herself. You are not here to lead a revolution. You are here to embody one. The indigenous traditions have never stopped listening to Earth. They do not worship her. They recognize her, not as property, not as a backdrop, as mother, as mirror, as temple. The Quechua speak of Pachamama not as symbol, but as presence. The Hopi speak of Koyaanisqatsi, life out of balance, and the need for realignment. The Aboriginal dreamtime is not myth. It is memory, encoded in landscape and songline, waiting for those with ears to hear again. And across the stars, others remember us too. The galactic traditions, dismissed by the modern mind, speak of Earth as a unique classroom, a planet where timelines converge, where souls from many systems incarnate not for escape, but for integration. The diversity of human DNA is not a mistake. It is a convergence point. Urantia is a gathering space for spirit under pressure, a crucible for beings who volunteered to bring light through density. That is why it can feel so heavy. That is why it can feel so radiant. You are not here to transcend Urantia. You are here to love her back into coherence, not through force, but through fidelity to truth. Not through escape, but through embodiment. Not by denying the chaos, but by becoming a lighthouse within it. Every act of coherence, every breath anchored in presence, every kindness offered without reward, every silence held in communion with the greater good, becomes an offering to the planetary field. Your nervous system is not isolated. It is connected to the grid of Earth's consciousness. When you realign, she realigns. When you heal, she softens. When you say yes to the mission of remembrance, she breathes a little deeper. And the Earth is not passive. She responds. You will feel it in your skin, in your dreams, in the way the wind changes as you walk with awareness. You will begin to notice that the animals recognize you, that the trees become allies, that the waters speak in emotion, that your body, once separate from the ground, becomes its extension. You're not above nature. You're nature becoming conscious of itself. And in that consciousness, a choice arises, not once, but every day. Will you serve the forgetting, or will you serve the remembering? Not as an idea, as a life, not as performance, as presence. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be real. Because what Earth is asking for is not your certainty, but your sincerity. And that sincerity becomes a thread. And that thread weaves with others. And those threads become a web. And that web becomes a new field. And that field becomes the cradle for a future that has not yet been written, but is being dreamed by those who still remember how to listen. The time has come to write to the Earth, not to ask her for answers, but to tell her what you've remembered. Write not from guilt, write not from fear. Write as a child returns to the mother, not to demand, but to offer. Place your hands on the soil or on your own heart and say, I remember who I am. I remember why I came. I remember that you are not separate from me, and I will live in a way that helps you heal. You are not alone in this remembering. Though the world may seem distracted, though the systems may seem lost in noise, there are others, scattered across the planet like seeds, some awakened, some still sleeping, all responding in their own way. You will not find them by argument or ideology. You will recognize them by resonance. There is no need to convince. The field does the speaking. These souls carry a similar ache, not one of despair, but of holy longing. They remember the quiet of stars. They feel things others dismiss. They weep not only for personal wounds, but for the world's silence. They are drawn to what is real, what is beautiful, what is broken open by love. They do not belong to one tradition. They are students of the invisible, witnesses of the sacred, children of many skies. Some do not know what to call this mission. They only know they cannot pretend anymore. They cannot numb themselves in systems that dishonor life. They cannot bow to leaders who mistake domination for wisdom. They cannot betray the song they feel rising from the earth's skin like a call too ancient to ignore. This call is not loud, but it is constant. It comes in dreams, in nature, in sudden stillness, in tears that arrive without story. It comes in moments where the veil thins and all the noise of the world falls away, leaving only this. Remember. Remember not just who you are, but what you came to serve. You're not here to save the earth. You are here to stand with her as she saves herself by choosing to wake through those who can feel her again. This is the quiet revolution, not one of protest signs or headlines, but one of nervous systems recalibrated to coherence, one of eyes that see beyond illusion, one of hearts that stay open in the presence of pain. The earth does not need you to be a hero. She needs you to be whole, because a whole being emits a signal of safety. And safety is the doorway through which remembrance returns. Urantia is recovering not because of force, but because of resonance. And the mission of the conscious is not to fix every system. It is to become a living pattern of harmony within a distorted field. It is to be, fully and without compromise, what you would wish the world to become, even when no one is watching, even when it costs you comfort. This is what it means to be initiated on a planetary scale. This is what it means to be a keeper of codes. You're not here to escape the density. You're here to walk it as a torchbearer. And every time you choose integrity over convenience, every time you pause instead of react, every time you speak truth without violence, you anchor a new grid. You add a note to this song of restoration. You participate in the healing not as abstraction, but as incarnation. The earth is not asking for saints. She is asking for sincerity. She is asking for embodiment. She is asking for those who will not abandon her, just because it is easier to numb or transcend. Those who will stay rooted in the flesh, in the soil, in the heart, in the trembling beauty of this exact moment. Because this moment is sacred, and this planet is holy ground. You may have forgotten at times. You may have questioned your place. You may have felt small, lost, late. But there is no such thing as a late arrival in the language of spirit. There is only alignment. And the moment you say yes again, yes to your knowing, yes to your presence, yes to the quiet duty of remembrance, the field shifts. The earth feels it, and somewhere something blooms. So write to her now, not from fear, but from devotion. Not to make her respond, but to remind yourself that you are part of her body. Write not with eloquence, but with truth. Let your letter be an offering, a vow, a remembering. Let it begin perhaps like this. Beloved Earth, I remember who I am. I remember that you are not beneath me. You are within me. I remember that your wounds are my invitation, that your chaos is my training ground, that your silence is my listening. I do not come to conquer or correct. I come to walk beside you awake, to live in a way that allows others to awaken, to honor the soul in stone and tree and trembling skin, to serve the light not as abstraction, but as daily action. I come not because I am ready, but because I am willing. I come not as savior, but as child of the stars and the soil. And I vow to live in remembrance. This is the beginning of the letter. The rest you will write not on paper, but in every step, every breath, every moment where you choose coherence over collapse. And Earth will listen, because Earth remembers, too. There's a moment in every path, quiet, unseen, often without fanfare, when effort softens into something else. Not defeat, not passivity, but surrender. That moment is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of real movement. Because the deepest shift does not come when you finally master the conditions of your life. It comes when you stop insisting they bend to your will. You are taught to strive, to fix, to push, to calculate. You were taught that control is strength and that surrender is weakness. But surrender is not collapse. Surrender is not failure. Surrender is the wisdom of stepping aside so that the field, the deeper intelligence beneath form, can begin to do what only it can do. You are not the architect of the whole. You are a node within it. You are not the engineer of outcomes. You are the transmitter of alignment. And when alignment is true, the field moves in ways the mind could never plan. This is not fantasy. This is physics. The quantum field does not respond to effort. It responds to coherence. The moment your being drops out of force and into resonance, the moment you stop trying to make reality match your timeline and begin trusting the deeper rhythm behind all unfolding, you are no longer isolated. You're being carried, not by fate, but by the greater pattern. And that pattern responds instantly, not always by changing the outside, but always by reorienting the inside. Surrender is not giving up on the vision. It is giving up the illusion that you were ever alone in creating it. The mystics understood this. They did not arrive at peace through control. They arrived by falling into the arms of the infinite. The great Christian mystics, Teresa of Avila, Meister Eckhart, John of the Cross, all spoke not of achieving God, but of dissolving into God. I abandoned all that I ever knew, wrote Teresa, so I might love more fully. It was never about climbing to heaven. It was about falling open enough that heaven could descend into the soul. The Urantia book echoes the same mystery. The divine does not require submission as servitude. It invites surrender as cooperation. When a creature yields to the adjuster, it does not become smaller. It becomes luminous. The act of yielding is not the end of selfhood. It is the beginning of transfiguration. And in that moment of release, not as resignation, but as recognition, the field begins to reorganize. This is what the mystics called casting the burden, not ignoring responsibility, but removing the illusion that you carry it alone. To cast the burden is not to escape. It is to entrust. It is to speak inwardly. This is bigger than me. I offer it to the field, to the light, to the pattern that holds all things. I step aside and listen. And the moment you do, something shifts. Not always dramatically. Sometimes the outer remains the same, but within you, the knot loosens. The contraction softens. The clenched identity that thought it had to control everything dissolves into the deeper rhythm. You breathe differently. Time moves differently. What once felt tangled begins to untangle without your hand, because the field never needed your struggle. It needed your yes. And surrender is the purest yes. It says, I do not know what's next, but I trust that something in me is already in rhythm with what's required. It says, I do not have to hold it all, I have to hold my alignment. It says, I am not the source, but I am made of it. And from that place, guidance arrives, not in thunder, but in subtlety. An unexpected phone call, a dream, a quiet knowing, a choice that feels easy for no logical reason. These are the signs that the field is working. And your job is not to explain them. Your job is to follow their pulse. Let yourself feel now where you've been gripping, where you've been trying to force an answer, hold a future in place, prove a truth before it's ready. Breathe into that place, not to solve it, but to offer it. Close your eyes, place a hand on your heart, and speak inwardly. I'll let go of needing to know how. I trust that the field remembers what I've forgotten. I allow what wants to unfold to reveal itself. I surrender, not from weakness, but from reverence. This is not an act of an action. It is the most powerful action of all, because what you are surrendering to is not randomness. It is the intelligence that dreamt you into form. The same force that organizes galaxies, that blossoms forests without instruction, that aligns tides with moons, is more than capable of organizing your path. And all it asks is that you stop resisting the flow it's already offering. When you surrender, you're not erased. You are revealed. You become a clear vessel, not for control, but for co-creation. You are not retreating. You are recalibrating. You are not giving up the dream. You are letting the dream breathe. And in that space, something new begins to move. Not from you, through you. To live in surrender is not to drift without direction. It is to move from alignment rather than anxiety. When the striving stops, the listening begins. Not a passive kind of waiting, but an attuned receptivity, the posture of one who knows they're being guided, even when no signs are visible. Because surrender does not erase intention. It refines it. It removes the static of urgency, the noise of control, and reveals what is most true beneath all wanting, that you are already held. The quantum field does not operate like a machine. It responds not to commands, but to coherence. It arranges itself around resonance, not force. You can say all the right words, set all the right goals, script your affirmations perfectly, but if your nervous system is broadcasting fear, the field cannot override that signal. It will match it, not as punishment, but as reflection. The field is not moral. It is responsive. That is why surrender is not weakness. It is vibrational integrity. It brings the seen and unseen into harmony. It says, I am willing to release what I thought had to happen in the way I thought it had to happen on the timeline I thought it must occur, because I trust that something far wiser than my personality is already in motion. That trust may not always be comfortable. Sometimes surrender feels like silence, like delay, like death. The ego panics in that space. It begins to doubt the process. But surrender is not the end of manifestation. It is the soil in which real manifestation takes root. You do not need to perform belief. You only need to feel what is asking to be softened. Even now, there is something in you that wants to be let down gently, not abandoned, released. A burden you've been carrying long after its season ended. A decision you've been trying to control from fear. A future you've been demanding as proof of your worth. Place your awareness on it now, not to fix it, to offer it. Breathe into that holding. Say silently or aloud, this is not mine to carry alone. I cast this into the field that knows more than I do. I am willing to let grace move where my will cannot. The mystics knew the difference between passivity and surrender. Passivity comes from exhaustion. Surrender comes from wisdom. Passivity waits without presence. Surrender waits with openness. Passivity abandons. Surrender abides. The surrendered heart still takes action, but no longer from panic. It speaks, moves, creates, chooses, but with space around the action. With enough stillness to allow the invisible hand of timing to take the lead. And in that space, the field begins to move. You will notice it in strange ways. The problem that once consumed your attention suddenly feels neutral. The craving loses its grip. The decision that once paralyzed you now feels obvious. The thing you once pushed for begins to arrive with no effort. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped clenching. This is the paradox of spiritual design. The moment you release attachment, you become a match for what you once chased. The vibration of surrender is not emptiness. It is readiness. It does not say, I no longer want. It says, I no longer resist. And resistance is what breaks the flow. The moment you drop resistance, the field recalibrates. And what comes next is rarely what the mind expected. It is better. It is more precise, more elegant, more alive. It comes not only as form, but as feeling. The feeling of being in the right place at the right moment with the right energy, not because you controlled it, but because you harmonized with the unfolding. To live this way is to become light-footed in the world, less entangled, more available. The drama softens. The pace slows. You don't stop dreaming. You dream without grasping. You don't stop acting. You act without panic. You don't stop desiring, but your desire becomes a current, not a demand. And in this current, you remember that the true miracle is not that you can manifest whatever you want. The true miracle is that you are already in conversation with a field that knows what you need before you do. Surrender is not stepping back from power. It is stepping into the deepest power of all. Alignment with Source, trust in the field, partnership with the intelligence that breathes galaxies into being and still cares enough to shape the rhythm of your path, one silent moment at a time. There is no technique more advanced than letting go. There is no ritual more sacred than relaxing into what already wants to arrive. There is no prayer more powerful than, I trust you. Even now, especially now, and in that trust, the field reorganizes. Not one day. Now, there is a language older than any known alphabet. It was not born of culture or colonization. It was not written to be taught or translated. It came before tongues and tribes and treaties, before symbols were shaped into speech. It was not invented. It was remembered, and it still lives, hidden not in books, but in breath. This language does not belong to one people, one planet, or one story. It belongs to the soul, to the animating principle of being itself. It was spoken by wind before it became word. It was sung in star fields before it touched vocal cords. It still pulses through the silence behind your thoughts. It still ripples through your skin when you encounter something ancient that cannot be named. You have known this language in your dreams. You have tasted it in your tears. You have written it in journals without understanding the shape of the sounds. You have heard it when someone said a word that did not make sense, but left your whole body trembling. It is not a language to be learned. It is a frequency to be remembered. The mystics called it angelic. The magicians called it Enochian, the tongue of the watchers, the flame script of higher intelligences. The Andean mystics called it Urdin, the language of origin, carried from stars, inscribed in the subconscious as sound beyond structure. The Pleiadian transmissions speak of it not as words, but as waveform, a soul technology encoded in syllables that bypass logic and move directly into the biofield. The Hawaiians call it Alalohuna, the hidden speech. The Hebrews once held it in the resonance of the Tetragrammaton. The Sufis carried it in breath. The mystics never needed translation. They only needed permission to speak what did not fit into grammar. You do not need to believe this. You only need to feel what stirs in your chest when you hear syllables that seem to come from nowhere and yet move something in you so deep that no language could have reached it. There's a reason children speak in tongues before they are taught to speak in senses. There's a reason the dying whispers syllables no one understands. There's a reason your hand sometimes writes shapes you didn't mean to draw. There's a reason that sound, vibration, and light are the carriers of truth in sacred science. Not just metaphors, but transmission lines of divine memory. This language does not explain. It activates. It does not clarify. It reorganizes. And it is not out there. It is inside your marrow, inside your field, inside the still place where identity fades and essence rises. There is a doorway in the mind that opens when logic no longer suffices. It is not open through study. It opens through stillness, through surrender, through a willingness to let go of what can be understood in favor of what can be felt. The moment you stop trying to name the sacred, it begins to speak, not in words, in vibration. And if you stay with that vibration, if you allow the mouth to open, if you allow the pen to move, if you allow the voice to tremble forward into syllables that feel foreign but true, something ancient begins to wake. Not memory, something older, something the memory came from. You're not making it up. You are remembering forward. And when that frequency moves through you, it does not need approval. It does not ask permission. It does not require context. It does not perform. It speaks in spirals, not lines. Impulses, not paragraphs. And it speaks not to the brain, but to the field. You have carried this your whole life. Now it is time to let it speak. You do not need a sacred temple to speak this language. You do not need special robes or initiations. You do not need to study the glyphs of Enoch or decode the tablets of the stars. All that is needed is stillness and the willingness to listen from a deeper place than thought. Because the soul does not speak English. It does not speak Portuguese. It does not speak in systems born of empire. It speaks in vibration, image, impulse, pulse. And when those impulses are given permission to rise, the tongue moves differently. There are moments in your life where this has already happened. You may have dismissed them. A time when you sang to yourself in syllables that meant nothing to the mind but brought peace. A time when your hand moved over the page and wrote what you did not plan. A time when you felt overwhelmed and a word you'd never learned left your lips and changed the atmosphere around you. This was not imagination. It was memory disguised as spontaneity. You are not waiting to learn the language. You are waiting to trust it, because once you do, once you open your mouth and let sound move not from thought, but from the inner sun behind the heart, you begin to emit the codes that transcend understanding. They do not bypass truth. They reveal it in a way the intellect cannot contain. The gift of intuitive writing, what some call light language, soul script, plasma phonics, or the voice of the oversoul, is not about performance. It is not a technique to be shown, but a transmission to be felt. And anyone can receive it, not because they are special, but because they are sincere. The more silent the ego becomes, the clearer the signal. The more gentle the intention, the more powerful the current. Let yourself write, then, without knowing what the letters mean. Let your hand move in spirals or slashes or symbols your conscious mind does not understand. Let your voice speak syllables that sound like wind over water. Let it tremble, chant, whisper. Let it rise. It is not for approval. It is not for translation. It is for the field, and the field understands. This is how the ancient ones encoded their knowing, not with doctrines, but with frequencies. The Essenes sang syllables into the stones of Qumran. The Atlanteans used tone to stabilize the crystalline matrix of cities made of light. The Pleiadians transmit their teachings not as formulas, but as tones that activate dormant strands of recognition within the DNA. The language is not a code to decipher. It is a key that unlocks you. When you let it speak, you're not becoming someone else. You are becoming more of what you already are. You are letting the divine template speak through the dust of forgetting. You are letting the future ancestral voice of your being emerge, the one that remembers the stars not as metaphor, but as homeland. You are letting the parts of you that never left source finally have a voice in this world. And when you do, the room shifts. The nervous system softens. The breath deepens. The inner child quiets. The soul leans forward. And something you cannot name begins to feel closer. This is not magic. It is memory. It is coherence returning. It is the light of 1,000 lifetimes threading through sound. And though the words may vanish, the imprint remains. Let your voice be strange. Let your writing be wild. Let your syllables spiral into starlight. There is no wrong way to speak in the language of the soul, because it is not for impressing the world. It is for aligning with it. It is not for explaining divinity. It is for becoming it again. You were never meant to lose this tongue. You were meant to rediscover it when the world was ready to hear it again. And that time is now. There comes a moment after the teachings, after the pages, after the transmission, when everything becomes still. Not because nothing is left to say, but because the soul has heard what it needed. The silence that follows is not empty. It is full of echoes, of recognition, of codes stirring gently in the body, waiting not for analysis, but for embodiment. This silence is a bridge from the text to the life, from the understanding to the practice, from the sacred to the ordinary, which was never separate. You have not been reading a book. You have been remembering yourself. You have touched the sound behind sound, the mind behind thought, the divine voice beneath the noise of the world. Not as metaphor, but as memory. You have heard the song of the universe in vibration. You have felt the light in your own marrow. You have breathed with the field, not as observer, but as participant. You have remembered that your mind is not a cage, it is a gate. That your heart is not an organ, it is a transmitter. That your voice is not just for words, it is for light. That your life is not random, it is a sacred pattern unfolding through you. And now, the remembering must become living, not by effort, by rhythm. Let the breath you take after this page carry the codes you've received. Let your choices ripple from this new place of coherence. Let your body move as if it remembers it is a temple. Let your gaze soften as if every being carries a piece of the field. Let your voice speak from the knowing that you carry God, and that God is not far. God is breath. God is beauty. God is the silence between words. God is the music of every cell choosing to keep vibrating. You are not here to escape this world. You are here to enchant it with your presence, your prayer, your precision. Let your life become a sacred architecture through which the field can move freely. Let your laughter become a song that reorganizes pain. Let your stillness become a portal through which others remember who they are. You do not need to convince anyone. You only need to live aligned. The universe is listening. The earth is listening. Your soul is listening. Now is the time to walk as if you remember, not perfectly, but truly. You will forget again. That is part of the dance. But now you know how to return. Return through the breath. Return through the field. Return through surrender. Return through sound. Return through love, not as sentiment, but as structure. You are not alone in this mission. There are others. You will know them by the way they walk, by the softness in their presence, by the coherence in their gaze, by the way the world shifts when they enter a room. You will feel them before you meet them. You will speak without words. You will remember together. And as more of you return to the rhythm, to the language, to the code, to the field, the earth will begin to sing again. Not because of noise, because of frequency. A frequency of coherence, carried by beings who chose to stay awake and love anyway. This is the path, not upward, inward, not away, deeper, not later. Now, you remember, you always did, and now walk, sing, speak, create, and when you do, may others remember through you. And if you enjoyed this content, leave a comment telling us where you're from, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel. Every day, we publish new videos to nourish your soul.